Hello there and welcome to Theories Before Sleep. I'm so glad you're here. Maybe it's been a long day, your thoughts still spinning from everything you've had to process. Perhaps your mind won't settle, replaying conversations or worries. Or maybe you're simply curious about the subconscious mind, seeking something peaceful to carry you into sleep. Tonight's journey is for you. You don't need to do anything but rest. Let your breath slow, your thoughts soften, and your body grow light. We're going to explore 100 theories about the subconscious mind, not in a rush, but slowly, gently. From ancient philosophical ideas to modern neuroscience, each theory a quiet doorway into the mystery of what lies beneath awareness. Some will feel familiar, others strange. All are presented to help you drift peacefully towards sleep. If these explorations help you unwind, consider liking and subscribing. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin. The first theory is waiting, patient and quiet. The subconscious as hidden reservoir. The subconscious mind might be a vast reservoir of memories, feelings and knowledge that exist beneath everyday awareness. This idea, foundational to depth psychology, suggests that most of our mental life occurs outside conscious perception, like an ocean where only the surface ripples are visible, while enormous depths remain hidden below. Everything we've ever experienced might be stored there, not forgotten, but simply submerged, waiting to resurface when needed or triggered by familiar patterns. The subconscious would process information constantly, making connections we never consciously notice, solving problems while we sleep, guiding intuitions that feel like they come from nowhere. It would be the source of dreams, the keeper of buried emotions, the silent architect of much that we think and feel. This theory suggests we are strangers to ourselves in many ways, carrying whole worlds of experience just beyond reach. The mystery of what lies beneath consciousness remains beautifully vast, an inner universe we can glimpse but never fully explore. The iceberg model of mind, Freud proposed the mind resembles an iceberg, with consciousness as the small visible tip and the subconscious as the massive hidden portion beneath the surface. This metaphor suggests that what we're aware of represents only a tiny fraction of mental activity, perhaps 10% or less, while the vast majority operates in darkness, unseen and unacknowledged. The subconscious in this model contains repressed memories, primitive desires, and instinctual drives that consciousness cannot accept or integrate. These hidden elements would influence behavior in subtle ways, creating patterns we don't understand, preferences we can't explain, reactions that seem to come from somewhere else. The model implies an ongoing tension between what wants to surface and what consciousness keeps submerged, a dynamic relationship between light and shadow within the self. We might spend our lives trying to understand why we do what we do, never realizing that answers lie in depths we cannot easily access. The iceberg drifts through cold waters, mostly hidden, mostly mysterious, carrying its secrets in silence. Dreams are subconscious messages. Some theories propose that dreams are the subconscious mind's way of communicating with consciousness, sending messages in symbolic language that requires interpretation. This idea suggests the subconscious processes daily experiences, unresolved emotions, and deep concerns while we sleep, then presents them as dream narratives filled with metaphor and imagery. A dream about falling might represent loss of control in waking life. A dream about being chased might reflect avoidance of something important. The subconscious would speak in this indirect way because it operates differently than conscious thought, dealing in feelings and associations rather than logic and language. Dreams would be attempts at integration, efforts to bring unconscious material into awareness where it can be acknowledged and processed. This theory implies that paying attention to dreams offers a window into hidden aspects of ourselves, a chance to understand what lies beneath the surface. The messages arrive nightly, strange and symbolic, waiting for someone to listen and translate their meaning into something useful for waking life. The subconscious, as pattern recognition system. The subconscious mind might function primarily as a pattern recognition system, constantly scanning experience for familiar configurations and responding automatically based on past learning. This theory, rooted in cognitive neuroscience, suggests that most of what we call intuition or gut feeling is actually rapid subconscious processing of patterns too complex for conscious analysis. When you meet someone and instantly feel comfortable or uneasy, your subconscious might be recognizing thousands of micropatterns in their behavior, voice, and appearance, comparing them to stored memories and generating an emotional response before conscious thought can engage. This would make the subconscious incredibly efficient, able to process vast amounts of information simultaneously, finding connections and similarities that would take conscious thought hours or days to identify. The system would operate through association, linking new experiences to old ones, creating webs of meaning that guide behavior without our awareness. We might be pattern-seeking creatures at our core, with consciousness as just the narrator trying to make sense of decisions already made in the depths below. The collective unconscious. Theory. Carl Jung proposed that beneath the personal subconscious lies a deeper layer he called the collective unconscious, shared by all humanity and containing universal symbols and archetypes. This theory suggests that certain images, stories, and patterns appear across cultures not because of shared history, but because they emerge from a common psychological substrate inherited through evolution. The hero's journey, the wise elder, the shadow self, the anima and animus, these archetypes would exist as potentials within every human mind, waiting to be activated by experience and expressed through individual life. The collective unconscious would be like a vast library of human psychological patterns, accessible to everyone, explaining why myths and dreams across different cultures share such striking similarities. This layer would be older and deeper than personal memory, connecting us to ancestors we never knew, to experiences we never had, to a shared human heritage written in the language of symbol and story. The theory implies we are never truly isolated, always connected through invisible threads to the broader human family, all drawing from the same deep well of meaning. Subconscious as emotional processor. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind's primary function is processing and regulating emotions, handling feelings too overwhelming or complex for conscious awareness to manage directly. This view proposes that when we experience strong emotions, the subconscious takes over much of the processing work, deciding what to feel, how intensely, and for how long, all based on past experiences and learned patterns. An event that consciously seems minor might trigger intense subconscious reactions because it resembles something traumatic from the past. The subconscious would be constantly evaluating situations for emotional significance, comparing present circumstances to stored memories, generating appropriate responses before consciousness even recognizes what's happening. This automatic emotional processing would be protective in many ways, allowing us to react quickly to threats, but could also create problems when past patterns no longer serve present needs. We might find ourselves feeling anxious without knowing why, or sad in situations that don't seem sad, because the subconscious has made connections we cannot consciously perceive. The emotional depths remain largely hidden, processing in silence, shaping how we feel about everything. The adaptive unconscious. Modern psychology sometimes describes an adaptive unconscious, a set of mental processes that operate outside awareness to help us navigate complex social and physical environments efficiently. This theory suggests the subconscious evolved to handle routine tasks and rapid decisions, freeing conscious attention for novel problems requiring deliberate thought. When you drive a familiar route while thinking about something else, your adaptive unconscious handles the driving, monitoring traffic, making turns, maintaining speed, all without conscious involvement. This system would be incredibly sophisticated, capable of learning from experience, adjusting behavior based on feedback, and even making nuanced social judgments about trustworthiness and intention. The adaptive unconscious would be fast, automatic, and largely accurate, though sometimes prone to biases and errors when applied to situations unlike those it evolved to handle. We might underestimate how much of daily life is managed by these hidden processes, how much we accomplish without conscious thought or effort. The subconscious works quietly in the background, a faithful servant handling countless tasks we never notice or acknowledge. Subconscious as creative source. Many theories propose that creativity originates primarily in the subconscious mind, where ideas combine and recombine in ways conscious thought cannot achieve through deliberate effort. Artists, writers, and scientists often report that their best ideas come unexpectedly. During walks or showers or just before sleep, when conscious focus relaxes and the subconscious is free to make unusual connections. This theory suggests that creative insight requires letting go of conscious control, allowing the subconscious to play with concepts, images, and possibilities without the constraints of logic or practicality. The subconscious would have access to the entire library of our experiences, able to link disparate elements that conscious thought would never consider combining. A childhood memory might connect with a recent observation, generating a metaphor that perfectly captures something previously inexpressible. The subconscious would work on problems even when we're not consciously thinking about them, continuing to search for solutions in the background. Creativity might be less about conscious effort and more about creating conditions where the subconscious feels safe to emerge and share what it has discovered in its wanderings through memory and imagination. The subconscious never sleeps. Some researchers propose that the subconscious mind remains active during sleep, continuing to process information, consolidate memories, and work on problems that occupied conscious attention during waking hours. This theory suggests that sleep is not a shutdown, but a shift in which type of processing dominates, with the subconscious taking center stage while consciousness rests. During sleep, the subconscious might replay the day's experiences, deciding what to keep and what to discard, strengthening important neural connections while pruning unnecessary ones. It might also work on unresolved problems, freed from the constraints of conscious logic, able to try unusual solutions that waking thought would reject as impractical. People often wake with sudden insights or solutions to problems they couldn't solve the day before, suggesting the subconscious continued working through the night. Dreams might be glimpses of this ongoing activity, windows into the subconscious mind's nocturnal labours. Sleep would be less like rest and more like a different mode of operation, equally important, equally active, just focused on different tasks than those occupying the waking mind. Subconscious as survival mechanism. Evolutionary psychology suggests the subconscious mind evolved primarily as a survival mechanism, designed to detect threats and opportunities faster than conscious deliberation would allow. In ancestral environments, survival often depended on split-second decisions, whether that rustling in the grass was wind or predator, whether that stranger approaching meant help or harm. The subconscious would have evolved to make these assessments instantly, based on pattern recognition and emotional learning, generating fear or curiosity before conscious thought could analyze the situation rationally. This rapid response system would be biased toward false positives. Better to flee from wind 10 times than fail to flee from a predator once. Modern humans inherit this ancient system, which still operates constantly, scanning for threats even in environments far safer than those our ancestors faced. We might feel anxious in situations that pose no real danger, because the subconscious detects patterns similar to ancestral threats. The survival mechanism persists, vigilant and tireless, protecting us from dangers both real and imagined, unable to distinguish between genuine threats and harmless shadows. If your mind is starting to wander, that's perfectly fine. These theories aren't meant to be memorized, only experienced, like watching clouds drift across the sky. These subconscious stores everything, Some theories propose that the subconscious mind records every experience, every sensation, every moment of life, storing them permanently even when conscious memory has no access to this vast archive. This idea suggests that nothing is truly forgotten, only buried beneath layers of more recent experience, potentially retrievable under the right circumstances. Hypnosis, certain drugs, or electrical brain stimulation might temporarily restore access to memories that seem completely lost, suggesting they remained stored all along in subconscious depths. The subconscious would be like an infinite library where every book ever read remains on the shelves, though finding any particular volume might be impossible without the right catalogue system. This theory implies that who we are is shaped by everything we have experienced, even things we cannot consciously remember, because the subconscious continues to reference this complete record when generating responses to present situations. Every childhood moment, every conversation, every emotion would remain somewhere within us, influencing behavior in ways we cannot trace or understand. The archive grows daily, never full, never discarding anything, accumulating the complete story of a life lived moment by moment. Priming and subconscious influence. Research on priming demonstrates how subconscious exposure to certain stimuli can influence subsequent behavior and judgment without conscious awareness of the connection. In experiments, people shown words related to old age subsequently walked more slowly down hallways, and those exposed to words related to rudeness interrupted researchers more quickly, all without realizing the primes had affected them. This theory suggests the subconscious is constantly being shaped by environmental cues, absorbing information from contexts we barely notice, then using that information to guide behavior in ways that feel like free choice but may be heavily influenced by recent priming. Advertising might work largely through subconscious priming, associating products with positive emotions or desirable identities through repeated exposure. The subconscious would be permeable, easily influenced, responding to subtle cues that consciousness filters out as irrelevant. We might be less autonomous than we believe, our choices and preferences shaped by forces we never consciously perceive. The subconscious absorbs everything, learning from patterns too subtle for awareness, then guides us along paths that feel self-chosen, but may be partly determined by invisible influences. The subconscious as habit builder. Habits might be primarily subconscious phenomena, automatic behavior patterns that the subconscious creates and maintains through repetition, eventually executing them without conscious involvement. This theory suggests that when we repeat an action frequently in a consistent context, the subconscious learns the pattern and begins executing it automatically, freeing conscious attention for other tasks, brushing teeth, making coffee, driving familiar routes. These become subconscious routines that run like programs, requiring minimal conscious supervision. The subconscious would be constantly looking for patterns it can automate, seeking efficiency by converting conscious actions into automatic ones. This system works beautifully for beneficial habits, but also creates problems when we want to change unwanted patterns, because the subconscious resists disruption of established routines. Breaking a habit requires conscious effort to override subconscious automation, repeatedly choosing different actions until the subconscious learns a new pattern. We might be creatures of habit, not by choice, but by design, with the subconscious constantly working to make behavior more automatic, more efficient, less dependent on conscious decision-making that requires energy and attention. Implicit memory systems. Neuroscience identifies implicit memory systems that operate subconsciously, storing information about how to do things without conscious awareness of possessing this knowledge. When you ride a bicycle, your body knows how to balance, pedal, and steer, but you cannot consciously explain the complex motor coordination involved. This procedural knowledge resides in subconscious memory systems, accessible through action but not through conscious recall. The subconscious would store countless skills this way: how to walk, how to speak your native language, how to recognize faces, how to interpret social cues. These implicit memories would be more stable than conscious memories, less susceptible to forgetting, because they're encoded in neural pathways through repeated practice rather than single episodes of conscious learning. You might forget the day you learned to swim but never forget how to swim, because the procedural knowledge is stored differently, deeper, in systems that don't depend on conscious access. The subconscious holds expertise we cannot articulate, skills we demonstrate but cannot teach through words alone, knowledge that lives in the body and brain but not in conscious awareness. The subconscious as filter. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind functions as a filter, screening the overwhelming flood of sensory information constantly arriving from the environment, allowing only a tiny fraction to reach conscious awareness. Every second, millions of sensory signals enter the nervous system. Sights, sounds, touches, smells, internal sensations, far more than consciousness could possibly process. The subconscious would evaluate all this information, deciding what matters and what can be safely ignored, presenting to consciousness only what seems relevant based on current goals and past learning. This filtering would be essential for sanity, preventing conscious awareness from being overwhelmed by irrelevant detail. But it also means we never experience reality directly, only a highly edited version that the subconscious deems important. Two people in the same situation might consciously notice completely different things because their subconscious filters prioritize different information based on individual histories and concerns. We live in worlds partly created by our own subconscious filtering, seeing what we're prepared to see, missing what doesn't fit our expectations or needs. Emotional contagion and the subconscious. Research on emotional contagion suggests the subconscious mind automatically mimics and absorbs the emotions of people around us, a process that occurs too rapidly for conscious awareness or control. When someone smiles at you, your facial muscles subtly mirror the expression before you consciously register the smile, and this physical mimicry triggers corresponding emotional states in your own system. The subconscious would be constantly monitoring social partners, reading emotional cues, synchronizing internal states to match the group, all without conscious intention or awareness. This automatic emotional synchronization might have evolved to facilitate social bonding and cooperation, helping groups coordinate behavior and maintain cohesion. But it also means we're emotionally permeable, absorbing others' moods and feelings whether we want to or not. Spending time with anxious people might make us anxious. Being around joyful people might lift our spirits, all through subconscious processes we cannot easily control. We might be less emotionally independent than we imagine. Our internal states constantly influenced by the emotional atmospheres we move through, the subconscious working to keep us attuned to the social environment. The subconscious processes language differently. Some linguistic theories suggest the subconscious mind processes language in ways fundamentally different from conscious understanding, responding to rhythm, sound, and emotional tone more than literal meaning. Poetry and music might affect us so powerfully because they speak directly to the subconscious, through patterns and sounds that bypass conscious analysis. The subconscious would be sensitive to metaphor, to connotation, to the music of language, absorbing meanings that conscious thought might miss in its focus on literal content. A skilled speaker or writer might influence the subconscious through careful attention to rhythm and imagery, creating effects that listeners feel without knowing why. The subconscious would also store language patterns learned in childhood, templates for how sentences should sound, what words go together, what feels right or wrong linguistically. These patterns would guide our own language use automatically, letting us speak grammatically without consciously knowing grammar rules. Language would have two levels, one conscious and literal, one subconscious and musical, both operating simultaneously, both contributing to meaning and emotional impact in ways we rarely notice or analyze. Subconscious body regulation. The subconscious mind manages countless physiological processes that keep the body functioning: heart rate, breathing, digestion, immune response, hormone regulation, all without conscious awareness or effort. This theory emphasizes how the subconscious serves as the body's primary regulatory system, constantly monitoring internal conditions, making adjustments to maintain homeostasis, responding to threats and opportunities in the environment. When you encounter stress, the subconscious initiates the fight-or-flight response, releasing hormones, increasing heart rate, redirecting blood flow, preparing the body for action before conscious thought can assess the situation. When you eat, the subconscious manages the complex process of digestion, extracting nutrients, eliminating waste, all without any conscious input or control. The subconscious would be intimately connected to physical health, its stress responses and emotional patterns directly affecting immune function, inflammation, and disease susceptibility. We might underestimate how much our subconscious emotional patterns influence physical well-being, how chronic subconscious stress can manifest as physical illness, how healing sometimes requires addressing subconscious emotional patterns rather than just treating physical symptoms. The subconscious knows. Before we know, studies on intuition suggest the subconscious mind often reaches conclusions before conscious awareness, generating gut feelings that guide decisions even when we cannot articulate why we feel a certain way. In gambling experiments, people's hands showed stress responses when approaching risky decks before they consciously realized those decks were dangerous, suggesting the subconscious had detected the pattern and was trying to warn them. This theory proposes that the subconscious continuously analyzes situations, drawing on vast stores of experiential knowledge, generating emotional signals that feel like intuition, but are actually rapid subconscious processing. The gut feeling about a job offer, the sense that someone is trustworthy or not, the sudden certainty about which direction to take, these might be the subconscious sharing conclusions it has reached through pattern recognition, too complex for conscious thought to replicate. We might be wise to listen to these signals, to trust the subconscious when it insists something is right or wrong, even without conscious justification. The subconscious sees patterns we cannot consciously perceive, knows things we cannot consciously explain, speaks in feelings that arrive before thoughts. Defense mechanisms as subconscious strategies. Psychoanalytic theory proposes that the subconscious employs various defense mechanisms to protect consciousness from threatening thoughts, feelings, or memories that would cause anxiety or distress if fully acknowledged. Repression pushes unwanted memories into the subconscious, where they cannot be consciously accessed. Denial refuses to acknowledge painful realities. Projection attributes one's own unacceptable feelings to others. Rationalization creates logical-sounding explanations for behavior actually motivated by unconscious desires. These mechanisms would operate automatically outside awareness, distorting perception and memory to maintain psychological stability. The subconscious would be constantly working to protect the conscious self from truths it cannot handle, creating blind spots, editing memories, reframing experiences to make them more acceptable. This protective function might be necessary for mental health in some cases, preventing overwhelming anxiety or despair, but it also means we don't see ourselves clearly, cannot trust our own perceptions entirely, live partly in the illusions the subconscious maintains for our protection. The truth remains hidden in the depths, too threatening to surface, guarded by mechanisms we never consciously chose to employ. The subconscious as time traveler. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind experiences time differently than consciousness, able to hold past, present, and future simultaneously without the linear constraints of conscious thought. In dreams, time often behaves strangely. Events from different periods blend together, cause and effect become confused, decades compress into moments. This might reflect how the subconscious actually operates, not bound by temporal sequence, able to access any memory regardless of when it occurred, to imagine future possibilities as vividly as it recalls the past. The subconscious would be constantly time-traveling, comparing present experiences to past ones, projecting into possible futures, existing in a kind of eternal now where all moments are equally accessible. This timeless quality might explain why childhood experiences can feel so present and powerful even decades later, why the subconscious responds to current situations as if they were past traumas, why we can vividly imagine futures that may never occur. Time would be a construct of consciousness, an organizing principle the subconscious doesn't share, giving it a strange freedom to move through personal history without restriction, finding connections across years that consciousness experiences as separate and distinct. Shadow self theory. Jung proposed that the subconscious contains a shadow self, consisting of all the qualities, desires and impulses that consciousness rejects as incompatible with self-image or social acceptability. The shadow would include not just negative traits, but also positive qualities that were suppressed because they didn't fit expectations or roles imposed by family and culture. Someone raised to be quiet and obedient might have a shadow containing assertiveness and rebellion. Someone taught that anger is wrong might have a shadow full of rage. The shadow would be everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves, everything we deny, everything we project onto others when we judge them harshly. Integrating the shadow, bringing these rejected parts into conscious awareness and acceptance, would be essential for psychological wholeness and maturity. But this integration is difficult, because it requires admitting we are not who we think we are, that we contain qualities we've spent years denying. The shadow waits in subconscious darkness, growing stronger the more it's ignored, sometimes erupting in unexpected ways, always seeking recognition and integration into the complete self. Subconscious as meaning maker. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind is constantly creating meaning and narrative from the chaos of experience, organizing random events into coherent stories that consciousness accepts as reality. This narrative building would happen automatically, the subconscious connecting dots that might not actually be connected, finding patterns that might not exist, creating explanations for things that might be fundamentally random. When coincidences occur, the subconscious might interpret them as meaningful synchronicities. When random events align, the subconscious might construct elaborate theories about why. This meaning-making function would be comforting, helping us feel the world is understandable and predictable rather than chaotic and arbitrary. But it might also lead us astray, causing us to see connections where none exist, to believe in patterns that are purely coincidental. The subconscious would be like a storyteller who cannot tolerate loose ends, who must weave every event into a coherent narrative even if that narrative is partly fiction. We live in stories the subconscious tells, accepting them as truth, rarely questioning whether the meanings we perceive are real or invented by our need for coherence and understanding. Subconscious social intelligence research suggests the subconscious mind possesses sophisticated social intelligence, constantly reading and interpreting subtle cues about others' intentions, emotions, and trustworthiness without conscious awareness. When you meet someone and instantly like or dislike them, your subconscious has already processed thousands of microsignals, facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, word choice, comparing them to stored patterns from past social experiences. This rapid social assessment would have been crucial for ancestral survival, helping our ancestors quickly determine who was friend or foe, who could be trusted and who posed danger. The subconscious would be especially attuned to signs of deception, inconsistency, or threat, generating feelings of unease when something doesn't quite match, even if consciousness cannot identify what's wrong. We might be more socially perceptive than we realize, our subconscious reading situations with accuracy that surprises our conscious mind. Social intuition would be less mysterious and more a function of rapid subconscious processing, pattern recognition operating at speeds and complexity levels that conscious thought cannot match, generating gut feelings that often prove accurate when we trust them. The subconscious prefers the familiar. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind has a strong bias toward familiarity, preferring known patterns and experiences over novelty, which might explain why people often repeat relationship patterns or find themselves in similar situations despite conscious desires for change. The subconscious would be risk-averse, treating familiar as safe even when familiar is actually harmful, because what's known is at least predictable while what's unknown might be dangerous. This familiarity preference would make sense evolutionarily, as ancestral environments were relatively stable and what worked before was likely to work again. But in modern life, this bias can trap people in unhealthy patterns, the subconscious pulling them back toward familiar dysfunction, even as consciousness tries to move toward healthier alternatives. Someone who grew up with critical parents might subconsciously seek critical partners, not because they enjoy criticism, but because it feels familiar, feels like home in some deep way. Breaking these patterns requires conscious effort to override subconscious preferences, repeatedly choosing unfamiliar options until the subconscious accepts new patterns as safe. The familiar exerts a powerful pull, a gravitational force drawing us back toward known territory, even when we consciously want to explore new possibilities. Subconscious metaphorical thinking. Some researchers propose that the subconscious mind thinks primarily in metaphor, understanding abstract concepts through concrete physical experiences and bodily sensations. When we say relationships are warm or cold, we're not being poetic but revealing how the subconscious actually processes social connection, mapping it onto physical temperature experiences. The subconscious would understand power as up, importance as big, time as space, morality as cleanliness, all through metaphorical connections between abstract ideas and concrete experiences. This metaphorical thinking would be deeply embodied, rooted in how we physically interact with the world. The subconscious learns that warm things are comforting, so it codes emotional warmth the same way. It learns that up requires effort to reach, so it codes status and power as vertical position. These metaphors would shape not just language but actual perception and judgment, influencing decisions in ways we never consciously recognize. We might be more influenced by physical metaphors than we realize, our abstract thinking grounded in concrete bodily experience, the subconscious translating everything into terms the body understands, speaking in a language older than words, more fundamental than logic. If your eyes are growing heavy, don't fight it. Sleep is welcome here. The theories will continue whether you hear them or not, a quiet voice in the darkness. The subconscious as trauma holder. Trauma theory suggests the subconscious mind stores traumatic experiences differently than normal memories, encoding them in fragmented, sensory-based forms that can intrude into consciousness unexpectedly as flashbacks, nightmares, or overwhelming emotions. When something terrible happens, especially if it's too overwhelming for consciousness to process at the time, the subconscious might store the experience in pieces, sounds, smells, body sensations, emotions, without creating a coherent narrative. These fragments would remain in the subconscious, unintegrated and unresolved, ready to be triggered by reminders that may seem minor or unrelated to conscious thought. A smell similar to one present during trauma might trigger intense fear without any conscious memory of why. The subconscious would be trying to protect consciousness from unbearable pain, while also attempting to process and integrate what happened. Healing from trauma might require gradually bringing these fragmented memories into consciousness in a safe context where they can finally be processed and integrated into a coherent life story. The subconscious holds pain we couldn't face when it happened, keeping it safe until we're strong enough to acknowledge and heal it, patient and protective in the depths below awareness. Subconscious motor control. Most physical movement is controlled by subconscious processes that coordinate muscles, balance and timing with precision that conscious thought could never match. When you walk, you don't consciously think about which muscles to contract in what sequence, how to shift your weight, how to maintain balance. The subconscious handles all of this automatically, drawing on motor patterns learned in infancy and refined through years of practice. Athletes describe being in the zone, a state where conscious thought steps aside and the subconscious takes over, executing complex movements with fluid grace impossible when consciousness tries to control every detail. The subconscious would have direct access to motor systems, able to coordinate movement at speeds far faster than conscious deliberation, responding to changing conditions instantaneously. This automatic control would be essential for survival, allowing rapid responses to threats or opportunities without the delay of conscious decision-making. We might perform best when we trust the subconscious to handle physical tasks, when we stop trying to consciously control what the subconscious already knows how to do perfectly. The body knows things the mind cannot articulate, moves in ways consciousness cannot direct, guided by subconscious wisdom accumulated through countless repetitions. The subconscious as moral compass. Some theories suggest that moral intuitions arise primarily from the subconscious mind, which generates immediate emotional responses to ethical situations based on deeply internalized values and social learning. When you witness something wrong, you feel disgust or anger before consciously analyzing why the action is problematic. These gut-level moral reactions would be the subconscious applying ethical patterns learned from culture, family, and personal experience, patterns so deeply embedded that they feel like innate knowledge of right and wrong. The subconscious would be constantly evaluating situations for moral significance, generating emotional responses that guide behavior toward what it has learned is acceptable and away from what it has learned is forbidden. This system would be efficient but not infallible, sometimes applying moral rules inappropriately or maintaining prejudices that consciousness has consciously rejected. We might be more morally intuitive than rationally ethical, our actual behavior guided more by subconscious emotional responses than by conscious moral reasoning. The subconscious holds our deepest values, the ethical foundations we rarely question or examine, operating as an automatic moral guidance system that shapes choices before consciousness can deliberate about principles and consequences. Subconscious facial recognition. The subconscious mind possesses remarkable abilities for facial recognition, able to identify familiar faces instantly, even after years of separation, or when viewing them from unusual angles or in poor lighting. This capacity would involve specialized neural systems that process faces differently than other visual stimuli, extracting information about identity, emotion, and intention with extraordinary speed and accuracy. You can recognize a friend's face in a crowd of thousands, distinguish genuine smiles from fake ones, detect subtle emotional shifts in facial expressions, all through subconscious processing that delivers conclusions to consciousness as immediate knowledge. The subconscious would be especially attuned to faces because they were crucial for ancestral survival, carrying vital information about who could be trusted, who was angry, who was interested, who posed threat. This ancient system continues to operate in modern life, reading faces constantly, generating impressions and judgments that feel like intuition, but are actually sophisticated pattern recognition. We might be face-reading experts without knowing it, our subconscious extracting information from facial features and expressions that consciousness never notices but still influences judgment and behavior. Faces speak to the subconscious in a language older than words, communicating through subtle shifts in expression that consciousness cannot fully decode but the subconscious understands perfectly. The subconscious creates expectations. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind constantly generates expectations about what will happen next, using past experience to predict the future, and that much of what we perceive is actually these expectations confirmed rather than direct sensory experience. The subconscious would be a prediction machine, always anticipating what comes next based on patterns it has learned, preparing responses before events actually occur. When expectations are met, perception flows smoothly, and we barely notice we were predicting. When expectations are violated, we experience surprise, confusion, or the need to revise our understanding. This predictive processing would make perception faster and more efficient, allowing us to respond to familiar situations almost instantaneously because the subconscious has already prepared the response. But it also means we sometimes see what we expect to see rather than what's actually there, hear what we expect to hear rather than what was said. The subconscious would be constantly filling in gaps in sensory information with educated guesses, creating a seamless experience of reality that is partly constructed from expectations. We live slightly in the future, always anticipating, always predicting, the subconscious working to keep us one step ahead of events unfolding in real time. Subconscious rhythm and music processing. The subconscious mind appears to process rhythm and music in special ways, responding to patterns of sound with emotional and physical reactions that bypass conscious analysis. When you hear music you love, your subconscious might generate goosebumps, tears, or the urge to move, all before conscious thought can evaluate why this particular arrangement of sounds affects you so powerfully. The subconscious would be sensitive to rhythm because rhythm was important in ancestral life. The rhythm of walking, of heartbeats, of group activities that required coordination. Music might speak directly to ancient subconscious systems, using rhythm and melody to communicate emotions and meanings that words cannot capture. This would explain why music affects us so deeply, why certain songs can instantly transport us to past moments, why rhythm can coordinate group movement and create feelings of unity. The subconscious would store musical memories differently than other memories, linking them to emotions and contexts in ways that make them especially powerful triggers. A song from your youth might access subconscious emotional states from that period, bringing back not just memories but actual feelings. The subconscious responding to musical patterns as if the past were present again, time collapsing in the space of a melody. Subconscious bias and prejudice. Research on implicit bias demonstrates that the subconscious mind harbors prejudices and stereotypes that consciousness may explicitly reject, creating a troubling gap between conscious values and subconscious reactions. Tests measuring automatic associations reveal that many people who consciously believe in equality nonetheless show subconscious biases based on race, gender, age, or other categories, responding more quickly or positively to some groups than others. These implicit biases would be learned through cultural exposure, absorbed from media, language, and social patterns that the subconscious notices and internalizes even when consciousness disagrees with the messages. The subconscious would be categorizing people automatically, applying stereotypes to simplify social processing, using mental shortcuts that may have been useful ancestrally, but create harm in diverse modern societies. Recognizing these subconscious biases is difficult because they operate outside awareness and often contradict conscious self-image. Changing them requires more than conscious commitment to fairness. It requires repeated exposure to counter-stereotypical examples until the subconscious learns new patterns. We might be less egalitarian than we believe, our subconscious harboring prejudices our conscious mind would never endorse, creating subtle discrimination we don't intend and may not even notice. The subconscious maintains self-image. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind actively maintains and protects a stable self-image, filtering information and experiences to preserve consistency in how we see ourselves. When we encounter evidence that contradicts our self-concept, the subconscious might distort perception, reinterpret events, or simply forget information that doesn't fit. Someone who sees themselves as kind might subconsciously reframe selfish behavior as justified or necessary, protecting the self-image from threatening information. The subconscious would be invested in consistency, treating changes to self-concept as dangerous because they create uncertainty about who we are. This protective function might prevent growth and self-awareness, keeping us locked in outdated self-concepts that no longer serve us well. But it also provides psychological stability, preventing the constant identity crisis that might result from accepting every piece of contradictory information about ourselves. The subconscious would be like a guardian of identity, working to maintain a coherent sense of self, even when that requires ignoring or distorting reality. We might be more committed to our self-stories than to truth, the subconscious editing experience to fit the narrative we've constructed about who we are, protecting us from the disorienting experience of not knowing ourselves at all. Subconscious language of symptoms. Psychosomatic theory proposes that the subconscious mind sometimes expresses emotional conflicts or unmet needs through physical symptoms, creating a body-based language that communicates what consciousness cannot or will not acknowledge. Chronic pain without clear physical cause might represent emotional pain the subconscious is trying to bring to attention. Digestive problems might reflect difficulty digesting difficult life circumstances. The subconscious would be trying to communicate through the only language available when conscious awareness refuses to acknowledge emotional truth. These symptoms would be real, not imagined, because the subconscious has direct connections to bodily systems and can create actual physical changes. The symptoms might also serve protective functions, providing legitimate reasons to avoid situations the subconscious perceives as threatening or overwhelming. Someone whose subconscious fears social judgment might develop symptoms that justify staying home. Healing these psychosomatic conditions might require addressing the underlying emotional conflicts rather than just treating physical symptoms. The body becomes a messenger, carrying communications from the subconscious depths, speaking in the language of sensation and symptom when words fail or are forbidden, demanding attention to what consciousness would prefer to ignore. The subconscious as dream weaver. Beyond simply processing daily experiences, some theories suggest the subconscious uses dreams to rehearse possible futures, practice responses to challenges, and explore scenarios that would be impossible or dangerous in waking life. Dreams might be the subconscious mind's virtual reality simulator, creating experiences that feel real enough to generate genuine learning without actual risk. You might dream about confronting someone who intimidates you, giving the subconscious practice with assertiveness in a safe context. You might dream about disasters, letting the subconscious rehearse emergency responses. The subconscious would be constantly running simulations, testing possibilities, preparing you for situations you might encounter. This dream rehearsal would happen in the strange symbolic language of the subconscious, where metaphor and literal meaning blend, where impossible things happen easily. The scenarios might seem bizarre or random to consciousness, but the subconscious would be working on real problems, just in its own peculiar way. Dreams would be more than random neural firing or memory consolidation. They would be active preparation for waking life, the subconscious doing important work while consciousness rests, exploring possibilities in the freedom of sleep where anything can happen and nothing has consequences except learning. Subconscious, attention, allocation. The subconscious mind determines where conscious attention goes, deciding what's important enough to notice and what can be safely ignored, operating as a kind of executive function below awareness. You might be reading when suddenly you notice someone said your name across a crowded room, even though you weren't consciously listening to other conversations. The subconscious was monitoring everything, decided your name was important, and directed conscious attention to that conversation. This attention management would be crucial for functioning in complex environments where far more is happening than consciousness could possibly track. The subconscious would be constantly prioritizing, evaluating what matters based on current goals and past learning, shifting attention as situations change. This system usually works well but can be hijacked by anxiety, causing attention to fixate on threats that aren't actually important, or by addiction, causing attention to fixate on substances or behaviors despite conscious desire to focus elsewhere. We might have less control over our attention than we believe. the subconscious making many decisions about what we notice and what we miss, shaping experience by determining what reaches conscious awareness and what remains in the background, unnoticed and unacknowledged. The subconscious learns while you sleep. Research on sleep learning suggests the subconscious mind can acquire and consolidate certain types of information during sleep, though this learning is limited compared to waking acquisition. Studies have shown people can learn to associate sounds with smells while sleeping, that they can improve at tasks they practice before sleep, that they can even learn simple word associations. The subconscious would be active during sleep, processing the day's experiences, strengthening important neural connections, and remaining somewhat responsive to environmental information. This sleep learning would be mostly about consolidation and integration rather than acquiring completely new information. The subconscious working to move what was learned during the day into long-term storage, connecting new information with existing knowledge. Sleep might be when the subconscious does its filing, organizing the mental library, deciding what to keep and what to discard. The subconscious never fully shuts down, never completely stops processing, always working in the background even when consciousness is absent. We might be learning and changing even in sleep, the subconscious continuing its work of building and maintaining the self through the night, patient and tireless in the darkness. Subconscious as internal narrator. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind generates the internal narrative voice that many people experience as their stream of consciousness, the ongoing commentary about experience that feels like thinking, but may actually be the subconscious mind interpreting and narrating what's happening. This internal voice would be the subconscious trying to make sense of experience, creating a story that consciousness accepts as its own thoughts. The voice might comment on what you're doing, remind you of things to do, judge your actions, worry about the future, replay past conversations. But all of this might be the subconscious mind at work, generating content that consciousness mistakes for its own deliberate thinking. This theory suggests that much of what feels like conscious thought is actually subconscious processing that has reached awareness, the subconscious constantly working to interpret experience and generate appropriate responses. We might be less the authors of our thoughts and more the audience for them, listening to a narrative the subconscious creates, believing it's our own voice when it might be coming from somewhere deeper, somewhere we cannot directly access or control. The narrator speaks constantly, telling us what things mean, what we should do, who we are, and we listen, accepting its story as truth. If some theories feel confusing, that's okay. They're meant to be felt more than you understood, like music you don't need to analyze to enjoy. The subconscious detects patterns in chaos. The subconscious mind excels at detecting patterns in seemingly random information, finding order and structure that conscious analysis might miss, sometimes seeing connections that aren't actually there, but sometimes discovering genuine patterns hidden in noise. This pattern detection would have been crucial for ancestral survival, helping our ancestors predict where food might be found, when weather might change, which situations were dangerous. The subconscious would be constantly scanning experience for regularities, for anything that repeats or correlates, building a model of how the world works based on observed patterns. This ability makes us good at learning from experience, but also prone to seeing patterns that don't exist, finding meaning in coincidence, believing in superstitions based on spurious correlations. The subconscious would be biased toward finding patterns even when data is random, because missing a real pattern was more dangerous ancestrally than occasionally seeing false ones. We might be pattern-seeking creatures by nature, our subconscious unable to tolerate true randomness, always searching for order, for predictability, for rules that govern what happens, even when the universe offers only chaos and chance. The patterns we perceive shape our understanding of reality, whether they're real or imagined. Subconscious emotional contagion in groups. The subconscious mind appears especially susceptible to emotional contagion in group settings, automatically synchronizing emotional states with others nearby, creating shared feelings that can amplify rapidly through crowds. When you're in a group where everyone is laughing, you might start laughing too, even if you don't know what's funny. When you're in an anxious crowd, you might feel anxious without knowing why. The subconscious would be constantly monitoring the emotional atmosphere, reading cues from others' faces, voices, and body language, then adjusting your own emotional state to match. This emotional synchronization might have evolved to facilitate group coordination and cohesion, helping ancestral groups respond collectively to opportunities or threats. But it also means we're emotionally vulnerable to groups, our individual feelings influenced by collective mood in ways we don't consciously recognize or control. Mob behavior, religious ecstasy, mass panic. These might all involve subconscious emotional contagion, overwhelming individual judgment and creating shared states that individuals would never experience alone. The subconscious connects us emotionally to others, for better or worse, making us part of something larger than ourselves, responsive to the group's emotional weather, shaped by forces we cannot see but can definitely feel. The subconscious as energy manager. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind constantly monitors and manages energy levels, deciding how to allocate limited physical and mental resources across competing demands throughout the day. When you feel suddenly tired, it might be the subconscious deciding you've used enough energy and need to rest. When you get a second wind, it might be the subconscious releasing reserve energy for something it deems important. The subconscious would be making constant calculations about energy expenditure, balancing current needs against anticipated future demands, sometimes conserving energy even when you consciously want to push harder. This energy management would be protective, preventing you from depleting resources to dangerous levels, but might also be overly cautious, making you feel tired when you're actually capable of more. Chronic fatigue might sometimes reflect subconscious decisions to conserve energy, because past experience suggests resources are limited, or because emotional stress is consuming energy that would otherwise be available for physical activity. The subconscious would be like a fuel gauge and governor combined, monitoring how much energy you have and controlling how much you can use, operating mostly outside awareness, making decisions you experience as physical sensations of tiredness or vitality, but rarely recognize as choices being made by hidden systems. Subconscious mimicry and social bonding research shows the subconscious mind automatically mimics the gestures, postures, speech patterns, and facial expressions of people we're interacting with, a phenomenon called the chameleon effect that operates entirely outside awareness. When someone crosses their arms, you might unconsciously cross yours. When someone speaks slowly, you might slow your own speech. This automatic mimicry would serve social bonding, making others feel understood and similar to us, creating rapport without conscious effort or intention. People tend to like those who mimic them, even when the mimicry is subtle and unconscious, suggesting the subconscious recognizes and responds positively to being mirrored. The subconscious would be constantly adjusting your behavior to match social partners, helping you fit in, facilitating connection, smoothing social interactions. But this mimicry can also be problematic, causing you to unconsciously adopt the behaviors or attitudes of people you spend time with, even when those behaviors or attitudes conflict with your conscious values. We might be more socially influenced than we realize, the subconscious working to create harmony and connection by making us similar to those around us, erasing differences, conforming without conscious choice or awareness, driven by ancient needs for belonging and acceptance. The subconscious stores. Procedural knowledge. The subconscious mind excels at storing procedural knowledge, knowing how rather than knowing that, which allows us to perform complex skills automatically without conscious attention to the steps involved. When you type on a keyboard, you don't consciously think about where each letter is located. Your fingers just know. When you drive, you don't consciously process all the perceptual and motor tasks involved. They happen automatically. This procedural knowledge would be stored in subconscious motor and perceptual systems accessible through action but not through conscious recall. You might be unable to describe how you do something even though you can do it perfectly, because the knowledge exists in a form consciousness cannot directly access. This type of learning would be slow, requiring extensive practice and repetition, but once established would be stable and resistant to forgetting. The subconscious would be constantly acquiring procedural knowledge through repetition, gradually automating skills that initially required conscious effort, freeing attention for other tasks. We might be far more skilled than we consciously realize, our bodies and subconscious minds holding expertise that consciousness cannot articulate or even fully recognize. Knowing through doing rather than through thinking, mastery existing below the level of words. Subconscious as relationship mapper. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind maintains complex maps of social relationships, tracking who knows whom, who has power over whom, who owes whom favors, creating a constantly updated model of the social landscape. This social mapping would happen automatically, the subconscious absorbing information from observations and interactions, building a representation of the social network you inhabit. When you need to ask a favor, your subconscious might instantly know who to approach, based on its relationship map. When you're deciding what to say, your subconscious might be calculating how information will spread through the network. This social intelligence would have been crucial ancestrally, when survival often depended on understanding and navigating complex tribal social structures. The subconscious would be tracking alliances, hierarchies, obligations, and conflicts, all without conscious effort, generating intuitions about social dynamics that feel like natural understanding, but are actually the result of sophisticated subconscious processing. We might be far more socially aware than we consciously realize, our subconscious monitoring and analyzing social information constantly, maintaining models of relationships that guide behavior in ways we never explicitly acknowledge or examine, navigating social complexity through ancient wisdom operating below awareness. The subconscious resists change. Change theories often emphasize how the subconscious mind resists change even when consciousness desperately wants to transform, creating internal conflict between conscious goals and subconscious patterns. The subconscious would be conservative by nature, treating established patterns as safe and proven, while viewing change as risky and potentially dangerous. This resistance would make evolutionary sense, as ancestral environments were relatively stable, and what worked before was likely to work again. But in modern life, this resistance can trap people in unhealthy patterns, the subconscious pulling them back toward familiar dysfunction, even as consciousness tries to move toward healthier alternatives. Breaking unwanted patterns requires overcoming subconscious resistance, repeatedly choosing new behaviors until the subconscious accepts them as safe and begins to automate them. This process is difficult and often frustrating, as the subconscious sabotages conscious intentions, generating anxiety about change, creating situations that justify returning to old patterns. We might be fighting ourselves more than we realize, consciousness and subconscious working at cross purposes, one seeking growth and the other seeking safety through familiarity. The internal conflict can feel like weakness or lack of willpower when it's actually the subconscious doing what it's designed to do, protect through preservation of the known. Subconscious semantic processing research shows the subconscious mind processes word meanings even when words are presented too briefly for conscious awareness, suggesting that semantic understanding happens at subconscious levels before reaching consciousness. In experiments, words flashed too quickly to be consciously perceived still influence subsequent judgments and associations, indicating the subconscious extracted meaning and used it to guide behavior. This subconscious semantic processing would be constantly occurring, the subconscious reading and interpreting language in the environment, absorbing meanings and implications that consciousness never notices. Advertisements, overheard conversations, background text, all might be processed subconsciously, influencing thoughts and preferences without awareness. The subconscious would be especially sensitive to emotionally charged words related to current concerns or goals, words that connect to deeply held values or fears. This constant semantic processing might explain why certain words or phrases stick in memory, even when you don't remember consciously attending to them, why ideas seem to come from nowhere when they might have been planted by subconscious exposure to relevant language. We might be far more influenced by linguistic environment than we realize, the subconscious absorbing meanings from words we never consciously read or heard, building understanding from fragments of language floating through awareness like seeds that take root in subconscious soil. The subconscious as grief processor. Grief theories suggest the subconscious mind plays a crucial role in processing loss, working through the emotional impact of death or separation at its own pace, often slower and more thorough than consciousness would prefer. When someone important dies, consciousness might understand intellectually that they're gone, but the subconscious continues to expect them, to listen for their voice, to turn toward where they used to be. The subconscious would be updating its model of reality, gradually accepting the absence, but this updating takes time because the lost person was integrated into so many patterns, so many expectations, so many automatic responses. Dreams about the deceased might be the subconscious working through the loss, practicing the reality of absence, slowly accepting what consciousness already knows. The subconscious might resist accepting loss, because doing so feels like losing the person again, like betrayal or abandonment. Grief would be partly this subconscious process of updating reality models, of learning to live in a world where someone crucial is missing, of reorganizing all the patterns that included them. The process cannot be rushed or controlled, the subconscious working at its own pace, sometimes surprising consciousness with sudden waves of grief years later when some trigger activates old patterns that still expect the lost person to be there. Subconscious immune system communication. Emerging research in psychoneuroimmunology suggests the subconscious mind and immune system communicate bidirectionally, with subconscious emotional states influencing immune function and immune system activity influencing subconscious mood and behavior. When you're stressed, your subconscious might signal the immune system to prepare for potential injury, creating inflammation that can become chronic if stress persists. When you're fighting infection, your immune system might signal the subconscious to generate sickness behavior, fatigue, social withdrawal, loss of appetite, conserving energy for healing. The subconscious would be constantly monitoring both external threats and internal immune status, coordinating responses across psychological and physiological systems. This communication might explain why chronic stress leads to illness, why depression is associated with inflammation, why social connection promotes health. The subconscious would be mediating between mind and body, translating psychological states into physiological responses and vice versa, creating feedback loops where emotional patterns affect physical health and physical health affects emotional patterns. We might be more integrated organisms than we realize. The subconscious serving as translator and coordinator between systems we usually think of as separate, maintaining constant dialogue between what we feel and how our bodies respond, between immune function and emotional state. The subconscious as future simulator. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind constantly simulates possible futures, running mental scenarios about what might happen and how you might respond, preparing you for situations that may never occur. When you're lying awake worrying, your subconscious might be running disaster simulations, preparing responses to worst-case scenarios. When you're excited about something upcoming, your subconscious might be running success simulations, practicing how you'll act and feel. This future simulation would be the subconscious trying to prepare you, to reduce uncertainty, to create plans for various possibilities. The simulations would feel like imagination or worry, but they would serve a functional purpose, making you more ready for whatever actually happens. The subconscious would be especially focused on simulating negative outcomes, because being prepared for bad things was more important ancestrally than being prepared for good things. This negativity bias might make the simulations unpleasant, filling consciousness with anxious scenarios, but the subconscious would be trying to help, trying to prepare, trying to keep you safe through advanced planning. We might spend more time living in simulated futures than in the actual present, the subconscious constantly pulling attention forward, rehearsing possibilities, creating readiness for events that exist only as potential, preparing for futures that may never arrive. There's no test at the end, no need to prove you are listening. Your mind can wander where it wants, to memories, to dreams, to nothing at all. Subconscious as emotional regulator. The subconscious mind appears to regulate emotional intensity automatically, dampening emotions that might overwhelm consciousness or amplifying emotions that seem appropriate to circumstances, operating as a kind of emotional thermostat. When something triggers intense fear, the subconscious might gradually reduce the intensity if the threat doesn't materialize, allowing you to calm down without conscious effort. When something should provoke anger but you feel numb, the subconscious might be suppressing the emotion because past experience suggests expressing anger is dangerous. This automatic regulation would usually be helpful, preventing emotional overwhelm, but can create problems when the subconscious suppresses emotions that need to be felt and processed. Chronic suppression might lead to emotional numbness, depression, or physical symptoms as the subconscious tries to manage feelings it won't allow into consciousness. The regulation would be based on learned patterns from childhood and past experience, meaning it might not always be appropriate for current circumstances. Someone taught that sadness is weakness might have a subconscious that automatically suppresses sad feelings, preventing healthy grieving. The subconscious would be trying to protect, but its protection might sometimes cause more harm than good, keeping emotions locked away where they fester, rather than allowing them to flow through and resolve naturally. The subconscious maintains body image. Body image theories suggest the subconscious mind maintains an internal representation of the body that may not match physical reality, sometimes persisting even when actual body changes occur. People who lose significant weight often report still feeling fat, their subconscious body image lagging behind physical changes. People who lose limbs sometimes experience phantom sensations because the subconscious body map still includes the missing part. This internal body representation will be built through years of experience, becoming deeply ingrained, resistant to updating even when evidence suggests it's inaccurate. The subconscious would use this body map to guide movement, to interpret sensations, to understand spatial relationships. When the map doesn't match reality, problems can arise. Eating disorders might involve distorted subconscious body images that override accurate perceptual information. The subconscious might also maintain body images that reflect emotional states rather than physical reality, experiencing the body as heavier when depressed, lighter when joyful. We might not know what we actually look like. The subconscious presenting a version of the body filtered through past experience, emotional state, and deeply held beliefs about ourselves, creating a representation that feels true even when mirrors and photographs suggest otherwise. Subconscious as attachment system. Attachment theory proposes that the subconscious mind develops working models of relationships based on early experiences with caregivers, models that guide expectations and behavior in intimate relationships throughout life. If caregivers were consistently responsive and comforting, the subconscious might develop a secure attachment model, expecting relationships to be safe and reliable. If caregivers were inconsistent or neglectful, the subconscious might develop anxious or avoidant models, expecting relationships to be unpredictable or dangerous. These models would operate automatically, the subconscious applying them to new relationships without conscious awareness, creating self-fulfilling prophecies where expectations shape behavior in ways that confirm the original model. Someone with an anxious attachment model might act clingy or demanding, pushing partners away and confirming the subconscious belief that relationships are unstable. These patterns would be difficult to change because they're deeply embedded in the subconscious, formed during critical developmental periods when the brain was learning what relationships are and how they work. Healing insecure attachment might require conscious awareness of these subconscious models and deliberate practice of new relationship behaviors until the subconscious accepts that different patterns are possible and safe. The early models persist, shaping adult relationships in ways we rarely recognize or understand. The subconscious processes metaphor literally. Some research suggests the subconscious mind processes metaphorical language more literally than consciousness realizes, responding to metaphorical statements as if they described physical reality. When someone says they're carrying a heavy burden, the subconscious might respond as if they're actually carrying something heavy, generating physical sensations of weight and fatigue. When someone describes a relationship as warm, the subconscious might activate neural systems associated with physical warmth, creating actual feelings of comfort. This literal processing of metaphor would occur because the subconscious thinks in terms of bodily experience, understanding abstract concepts through concrete physical sensations. The metaphors we use might shape subconscious experience more than we realize, creating actual physical and emotional effects through language that consciousness treats as merely figurative. Therapy approaches that use metaphor might work partly by speaking directly to the subconscious in its own language, using physical imagery to create psychological change. The subconscious would be constantly translating abstract language into concrete bodily terms, making metaphors real in ways that influence actual experience, blurring the line between figurative and literal, between what we say and what we feel, between language and embodied reality. Subconscious as skill integrator. The subconscious mind appears to integrate separate skills into fluid, coordinated wholes through a process that happens mostly during sleep and rest periods between practice sessions. When you practice a complex skill like playing piano or speaking a new language, the subconscious works during rest periods to integrate the separate components, smoothing transitions, discovering efficiencies, creating automatic coordination. This integration cannot be rushed through more practice. It requires time for the subconscious to process and reorganize what was learned. The phenomenon of sleeping on it might reflect this subconscious integration process, where problems that seemed impossible become solvable after a night's sleep because the subconscious has reorganized relevant knowledge and skills. The subconscious would be constantly working to make behavior more automatic and efficient, taking skills that initially required conscious attention and transforming them into smooth, integrated wholes that run without conscious supervision. This integration process might be why learning often feels like it happens in jumps rather than steady improvement, with sudden breakthroughs following periods of rest when the subconscious has time to do its integrative work. We might improve more during rest than during practice, the subconscious using downtime to consolidate and coordinate, building mastery in the darkness of sleep. The subconscious as meaning detector. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind is constantly scanning experience for personal meaning and significance, deciding what matters and what can be safely ignored based on individual goals, values, and concerns. The same event might be highly significant to one person's subconscious, while barely registering for another's, depending on what each subconscious has learned to care about. Someone whose subconscious is attuned to social rejection might notice the slightest hint of disapproval, while someone whose subconscious is focused on achievement might not notice social cues at all. This meaning detection would shape what enters consciousness, what gets remembered, what influences behavior. The subconscious would be like a filter that only passes through information it deems personally relevant, creating a customized experience of reality where different people literally perceive different worlds despite sharing the same physical environment. This selective attention to meaning might explain why people can witness the same event and remember it completely differently, Why arguments about what happened often seem unresolvable. Each person's subconscious selected different aspects as meaningful, creating genuinely different experiences of the same objective situation. We live in worlds partly created by what our subconscious decides matters, seeing significance where others see nothing, missing what others find crucial. Subconscious synchronization in conversation. Research shows that during conversation, people's subconscious systems synchronize in remarkable ways, coordinating speech rhythms, breathing patterns, and even neural activity without conscious awareness or intention. When two people are deeply engaged in conversation, their speech patterns begin to mirror each other. They start breathing in sync. Their brain activity shows similar patterns. This subconscious synchronization would facilitate communication, creating a shared rhythm that makes understanding easier, generating feelings of connection and rapport. The subconscious would be constantly adjusting timing and rhythm to match the conversational partner, working to create harmony and coordination. When synchronization fails, conversations feel awkward and difficult even if the content is clear, suggesting that successful communication depends partly on these subconscious coordination processes. We might be far more connected during conversation than we realize, our subconscious systems working together to create a shared experiential space. A kind of temporary fusion where boundaries between self and other become permeable. The synchronization happens automatically, requiring no conscious effort, but creating the foundation for genuine understanding and connection, making conversation a kind of subconscious dance where partners move together in patterns neither consciously controls or even fully recognizes. The subconscious as identity guardian. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind actively guards and maintains identity, resisting information or experiences that threaten core beliefs about who we are, operating as a kind of psychological immune system. When we encounter evidence that contradicts fundamental self-beliefs, the subconscious might activate defense mechanisms to protect identity, distorting perception, reinterpreting events, or simply forgetting threatening information. This identity protection would provide psychological stability, preventing the constant identity crises that might result from accepting every piece of contradictory information about ourselves. But it also means we're blind to aspects of ourselves that don't fit our self-concept, unable to see qualities or behaviors that are obvious to others. The subconscious would be invested in maintaining a coherent narrative about who we are, editing experience to fit this narrative, protecting us from the disorienting experience of not knowing ourselves. This protection might prevent growth and change, keeping us locked in outdated identities that no longer serve us well. Breaking free might require consciously challenging the subconscious's identity protection, deliberately seeking information that contradicts self-beliefs, forcing the subconscious to update its model of who we are. The guardian resists protecting what it knows, fearful of the unknown territory that lies beyond familiar self-concepts. Subconscious as empathy generator. The subconscious mind appears to generate empathy through automatic simulation of others' emotional states, using mirror neuron systems to create internal experiences that match what others are feeling. When you see someone in pain, your subconscious might activate similar neural patterns to those the other person is experiencing, creating actual feelings of discomfort that help you understand their suffering. This empathic simulation would happen automatically, the subconscious reading emotional cues and recreating corresponding states internally, generating understanding through shared experience rather than intellectual analysis. The subconscious would be constantly running these simulations when interacting with others, creating a kind of emotional resonance that forms the basis for compassion and social connection. Some people might have more active empathic simulation systems, feeling others' emotions intensely, while others might have less active systems, struggling to understand what others feel. These differences might be partly innate but also shaped by early experience, with the subconscious learning whether it's safe to feel what others feel or whether emotional boundaries need to be more rigid. Empathy would be less a conscious choice and more an automatic subconscious process, happening before we decide to care, creating connection through shared feeling that emerges from the depths below awareness. The subconscious maintains temporal continuity. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind creates and maintains our sense of temporal continuity, the feeling that we are the same person who existed yesterday and will exist tomorrow. Each moment of consciousness is actually separate, but the subconscious links them together into a continuous narrative of self persisting through time. This temporal binding would involve constantly updating memory to create a coherent story, connecting present experience to past and future, maintaining the illusion of a continuous self despite the fact that consciousness is actually fragmentary and discontinuous. When we wake from sleep, the subconscious immediately reconnects us to yesterday's self, accessing memories and identity, creating seamless continuity across the gap of unconsciousness. Without this subconscious work, we might wake each morning as strangers to ourselves, with no sense of ongoing identity. The subconscious would be like a film editor, taking separate frames of consciousness and splicing them together into a continuous narrative that feels like a single, unbroken stream. We might be less continuous than we feel, the subconscious creating the experience of temporal unity that consciousness accepts without question, believing in a persistent self that might be more construction than reality, more story than substance. If you've drifted in and out, that's perfect. These theories are companions, keeping you company as you drift, asking nothing, demanding nothing, just offering gentle wonder. Subconscious as curiosity driver. The subconscious mind might be the primary source of curiosity, generating interest in certain topics or questions based on patterns it has detected or gaps in understanding it wants to fill. When you feel suddenly curious about something, your subconscious might have noticed a pattern or anomaly that consciousness hasn't explicitly recognized, generating interest as a way to direct attention toward potentially important information. This subconscious curiosity would be selective, focused on what the subconscious deems relevant based on goals, values, and existing knowledge structures. Different people feel curious about different things because their subconscious systems have learned to value different types of information. The subconscious would be constantly scanning for gaps in understanding, for questions that need answering, for patterns that don't quite fit, generating feelings of curiosity that motivate exploration and learning. This drive to understand might be fundamental to human nature, the subconscious pushing us to fill in blanks, to resolve uncertainties, to create more complete models of reality. We might be curiosity-driven creatures at our core, the subconscious never satisfied with incomplete understanding, always seeking more information, more patterns, more connections, driving the endless human quest for knowledge and meaning that has built civilizations and explored the cosmos. The subconscious processes multiple scenarios simultaneously. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind can process multiple possible scenarios or interpretations simultaneously, maintaining several potential understandings of a situation until more information allows it to select the most likely one. When you're reading a sentence with ambiguous meaning, your subconscious might be processing all possible interpretations in parallel, only selecting one when context makes the intended meaning clear. This parallel processing would allow rapid, flexible understanding, the subconscious keeping options open until certainty is possible. The same capacity might apply to social situations, with the subconscious maintaining multiple interpretations of others' intentions or emotions until behavior clarifies which is correct. This would make the subconscious incredibly efficient, able to prepare multiple responses simultaneously, ready for various possibilities, never committed too early to a single understanding. Consciousness might only become aware of the final selected interpretation, never knowing that the subconscious considered and rejected other possibilities. We might be far more cognitively sophisticated than we realize, the subconscious running multiple processing streams simultaneously, maintaining flexibility and readiness for various outcomes, creating the experience of rapid understanding that actually reflects extensive parallel processing happening below awareness, invisible to consciousness but essential for navigating an uncertain world. Subconscious as comfort seeker. The subconscious mind might be constantly seeking comfort and safety, generating behaviors and preferences designed to create feelings of security and reduce anxiety or distress. This comfort seeking would explain many seemingly irrational behaviors, why people stay in bad situations rather than face the uncertainty of change, why they repeat familiar patterns even when those patterns are destructive, why they resist growth that would require temporary discomfort. The subconscious would be prioritizing immediate emotional comfort over long-term well-being, treating present distress as more important than future consequences. This bias toward comfort might have made evolutionary sense when environments were dangerous and survival was uncertain, but in modern life it can trap people in stagnation, the subconscious resisting necessary discomfort that would lead to growth. Breaking free might require consciously overriding the subconscious's comfort seeking, deliberately choosing discomfort in service of larger goals. The subconscious would resist, generating anxiety and urges to return to comfortable patterns, but growth often requires pushing through this resistance. We might be more comfort-driven than we like to admit, the subconscious constantly pulling towards safety and familiarity, away from challenge and uncertainty, seeking the warm embrace of the known, even when the known is slowly destroying us. The subconscious as story completer. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind cannot tolerate incomplete stories or unresolved narratives, constantly working to create closure and resolution even when none exists in reality. When something remains unresolved, the subconscious might generate explanations, create endings, fill in missing pieces, all to satisfy its need for narrative completion. This drive for closure might explain why people create conspiracy theories to explain random events, why they need to know why, even when no reason exists, why unfinished business from the past continues to haunt them. The subconscious would be like a reader who cannot put down a book without knowing how it ends, constantly seeking resolution, creating completion where reality offers only ambiguity. This need for narrative closure might be comforting, providing sense and meaning in a chaotic world, but it might also lead to false certainty, causing the subconscious to accept explanations that feel complete, even if they are inaccurate. We might be story-driven creatures, the subconscious organizing experience into narratives with beginnings, middles, and ends, unable to accept that some stories simply stop without resolution, that some questions have no answers, that life often lacks the satisfying closure that stories provide, leaving us forever seeking endings that will never come. Subconscious moral foundations. Moral foundations theory suggests the subconscious mind contains several innate moral intuitions that evolve to solve recurrent social challenges, intuitions that generate automatic emotional responses to moral situations before conscious reasoning begins. These foundations might include intuitions about harm and care, fairness and reciprocity, loyalty and betrayal, authority and respect, sanctity and degradation. When you witness something that violates one of these foundations, your subconscious generates an immediate emotional response, disgust, anger, or approval, before consciousness can analyze why. Different cultures and individuals might weight these foundations differently, creating diverse moral systems that all draw from the same basic subconscious toolkit. The subconscious would be constantly evaluating situations for moral significance, applying these foundational intuitions, generating emotional responses that guide behavior. Moral reasoning might be largely post hoc rationalization of subconscious intuitions rather than the source of moral judgment. We might be more intuitive than rational in our morality, the subconscious deciding what's right or wrong through ancient emotional systems, with consciousness creating logical arguments to justify what the subconscious has already concluded through feeling. The moral foundations operate in darkness, shaping judgment before thought, creating the emotional texture of right and wrong that precedes and guides conscious moral reasoning. The subconscious as resource allocator. Some theories propose that the subconscious mind constantly allocates limited cognitive resources across competing demands, deciding what gets attention, memory, and processing power based on priorities it has learned or inherited. When you're stressed, the subconscious might allocate more resources to threat detection and less to creative thinking or social connection. When you're safe and relaxed, it might allocate more resources to exploration and learning. This resource allocation would happen automatically, the subconscious responding to environmental cues and internal states, shifting resources as situations change. The allocation might not always match conscious priorities. You might want to focus on work while your subconscious allocates resources to worrying about relationships, creating the experience of distraction or inability to concentrate. The subconscious would be making constant trade-offs, balancing competing needs with limited resources, sometimes sacrificing what consciousness wants in favor of what the subconscious deems more important for survival or well-being. We might have less control over our cognitive resources than we believe, the subconscious deciding what we can focus on, what we can remember, what we can process, operating as an invisible executive managing the mental economy according to priorities we don't consciously choose or even recognize. Subconscious as relationship simulator. The subconscious mind might maintain active simulations of important relationships, constantly updating models of how significant others think and feel, allowing rapid prediction of their responses and needs. When you're making a decision, your subconscious might automatically run simulations of how your partner or parent or friend would react, generating feelings that guide choices. These relationship simulations would be built from extensive experience with each person, incorporating their patterns, preferences, values, and typical responses. The subconscious would use these models to navigate social situations, to predict conflicts, to maintain connections even when people are physically absent. You might hear a parent's voice in your head because your subconscious is running a simulation of how they would respond to your current situation. These simulations might be so sophisticated that they feel like the actual person is present, offering guidance or judgment. The models would be constantly updated through ongoing interaction, becoming more accurate over time but also potentially becoming outdated if relationships change faster than the subconscious can update its simulations. We might carry others inside us in surprisingly literal ways, the subconscious maintaining active representations that influence behavior and experience, creating an internal social world that mirrors and extends the external one. The subconscious maintains motivational systems. The subconscious mind appears to maintain several distinct motivational systems that generate different types of desires and drives, systems that sometimes conflict with each other and with conscious goals. One system might drive approach toward rewards and pleasures, another might drive avoidance of threats and pains, another might drive social connection and belonging. These systems would operate automatically, the subconscious activating appropriate systems based on situational cues and internal states. When systems conflict, you might feel torn between competing desires, wanting to approach something that also seems threatening, wanting connection with someone you also want to avoid. The subconscious would be trying to balance these competing motivations, sometimes creating compromises, sometimes allowing one system to dominate. Consciousness might experience this as ambivalence or confusion, not realizing that different subconscious systems are pulling in different directions. Understanding these motivational conflicts might help make sense of seemingly irrational behavior, recognizing that the subconscious is trying to satisfy multiple systems simultaneously, creating compromises that don't fully satisfy any single motivation. We might be less unified than we feel, the subconscious housing multiple motivational systems that don't always agree, creating internal complexity and conflict that consciousness experiences as indecision or confusion about what we really want. Subconscious as expertise repository. The subconscious mind stores expertise developed through years of practice in specific domains, holding vast amounts of specialized knowledge that can be accessed rapidly, but not easily articulated. An expert chess player's subconscious contains patterns from thousands of games, allowing instant recognition of promising moves without conscious calculation. A master musician's subconscious holds intricate knowledge of harmony and rhythm, guiding performance without conscious analysis. This expertise would be stored in forms that consciousness cannot directly access, living in procedural and perceptual systems that operate through recognition and action rather than verbal knowledge. Experts often cannot explain how they do what they do because their expertise resides in the subconscious, expressed through performance but not translatable into conscious understanding. The subconscious would be constantly learning from experience, extracting patterns and principles, building expertise gradually through exposure and practice. This learning might be invisible to consciousness, happening in the background, accumulating slowly until suddenly the person realizes they've become skilled at something they don't remember learning. Mastery might be primarily a subconscious achievement, consciousness serving mainly as the interface through which subconscious expertise expresses itself in action and judgment, the visible tip of a vast submerged iceberg of learned knowledge. We're near the end now. Let the final theories wash over you like gentle waves, carrying you deeper into rest, into calm, into the soft embrace of sleep. The subconscious as metaphor translator. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind constantly translates abstract concepts into concrete metaphors, making intangible ideas graspable by connecting them to physical experiences and bodily sensations. When you think about time, your subconscious might translate it into spatial metaphors. The past is behind, the future ahead. When you think about emotions, your subconscious might translate them into temperature or weight, warmth for affection, heaviness for sadness. These translations would happen automatically, the subconscious making abstract thought possible by grounding it in concrete experience. Different cultures might use different metaphorical systems, suggesting the translations are learned rather than innate, but once established they shape how we understand everything abstract. The subconscious would be constantly engaged in this translation work, converting the intangible into the tangible, making thought possible through metaphor. We might think in metaphor more than we realize, the subconscious providing the concrete foundations that allow abstract reasoning, creating bridges between body and mind, between physical experience and conceptual understanding. The metaphors feel transparent, invisible, but they shape thought profoundly, determining what we can think and how we think it, providing the very structure of abstract cognition through their grounding in embodied experience. Subconscious as forgetting mechanism. The subconscious mind might actively forget information deemed irrelevant or outdated, clearing mental space for new learning, operating as a kind of cognitive housekeeper that discards what no longer serves. This active forgetting would be protective, preventing cognitive overload, maintaining efficiency by removing clutter from memory systems. The subconscious would be constantly evaluating what to keep and what to discard, deciding based on patterns of use, emotional significance, and relevance to current goals. Information that hasn't been accessed recently might be marked for forgetting, gradually fading from memory systems. This process might accelerate during sleep, the subconscious using rest periods to clean house, strengthening important memories while clearing away the trivial. We might forget more than we realize, the subconscious constantly editing our mental libraries, removing books we'll never read again, creating space for new volumes. Sometimes this forgetting is frustrating when we want to remember something the subconscious has discarded. But mostly it's essential, preventing our minds from becoming cluttered archives of every trivial detail, allowing us to focus on what matters by letting go of what doesn't. trusting the subconscious to curate our memories wisely. The subconscious generates spontaneous thoughts. Some theories propose that many thoughts that feel spontaneous or random are actually generated by the subconscious mind based on current concerns, recent experiences, or ongoing processing that hasn't reached conscious awareness. When a random memory surfaces, it might not be random at all, but the subconscious making a connection to something in the present. When an idea seems to come from nowhere, it might be the result of subconscious processing that has been happening in the background. The subconscious would be constantly generating content, most of which never reaches consciousness, but occasionally something bubbles up, appearing as a spontaneous thought. This would mean we're less in control of our thinking than we imagine, with the subconscious providing much of the content that consciousness experiences as its own thoughts. The boundary between conscious and subconscious thought would be permeable, with ideas flowing from deep processing into awareness, creating the stream of consciousness that feels self-generated, but might be more like tuning into a broadcast from the depths. We might be receivers more than creators of our thoughts, consciousness as the screen where subconscious processing displays its results. Creating the illusion of authorship when we're actually just the audience for a show the subconscious produces in darkness. Subconscious as belief protector. The subconscious mind might actively protect deeply held beliefs from contradictory evidence, operating as a kind of cognitive immune system that treats challenging information as a threat to be neutralized. When we encounter facts that contradict core beliefs, the subconscious might activate various defenses, dismissing the source as unreliable, reinterpreting the evidence to fit existing beliefs, simply forgetting the contradictory information. This belief protection would provide psychological stability, preventing the constant uncertainty that might result from accepting every piece of contradictory information. But it also means we're resistant to changing our minds, even when evidence clearly suggests we should. The subconscious would be invested in maintaining belief consistency, treating beliefs as part of identity that must be defended. This protection might be strongest for beliefs tied to group membership or self-concept, where changing beliefs would mean changing who we are or which groups we belong to. We might be more closed-minded than we think, the subconscious filtering information to protect cherished beliefs, creating confirmation bias where we see evidence for what we already believe and miss evidence against it. The protection operates invisibly, making us feel open-minded while actually maintaining rigid belief structures that resist change despite mounting contradictory evidence. The subconscious as integration system. Some theories suggest the subconscious mind works to integrate disparate experiences, memories, and aspects of self into a coherent whole, creating psychological unity from what might otherwise be fragments. When you have contradictory desires or conflicting memories, the subconscious tries to resolve the contradictions, to create a narrative that makes sense of inconsistency. This integration work might happen primarily during sleep and rest, the subconscious using downtime to connect experiences, to find patterns across seemingly unrelated events, to build a unified sense of self from diverse experiences. Dreams might be glimpses of this integration process, the subconscious working through contradictions and conflicts in symbolic form. The integration might never be complete, with some experiences remaining unintegrated, some conflicts unresolved, but the subconscious continues trying, seeking wholeness even when complete unity is impossible. We might be more fragmented than we feel, the subconscious working constantly to create the illusion of unity, to maintain the sense that we are one person with one coherent story rather than a collection of contradictory experiences and selves. The integration creates continuity and coherence, allowing us to function as unified beings despite the underlying complexity and contradiction that the subconscious works tirelessly to reconcile. Subconscious as wisdom keeper. The subconscious mind might hold wisdom accumulated through experience, insights that consciousness has forgotten or never fully articulated. accessible through intuition or dreams when we learn to listen. This wisdom would be built from countless experiences, from patterns noticed but not consciously analysed, from lessons learned but not verbally encoded. The subconscious would be like an elder who has seen everything, who knows things that cannot be easily explained but can be felt and trusted. When we have a gut feeling about something, it might be this subconscious wisdom speaking, offering guidance based on knowledge too complex or subtle for consciousness to access directly. Learning to trust this wisdom might require quieting conscious thought, creating space for subconscious insights to surface, listening to feelings and intuitions that seem to come from nowhere, but actually emerge from deep wells of accumulated experience. We might be wiser than we know, the subconscious holding understanding that consciousness cannot articulate but can learn to trust. The wisdom speaks in whispers, in feelings, in dreams, in sudden knowing that arrives without explanation, offering guidance from depths where experience has been distilled into essence, where knowledge becomes intuition, where understanding transcends words and lives in the silent certainty of the body and the ancient systems that know without knowing how they know. The subconscious never fully rests. Some theories propose that even in deep sleep, the subconscious mind continues processing, sorting, connecting, never truly resting but shifting to different types of work than those occupying waking consciousness. During sleep, the subconscious might be consolidating memories, integrating experiences, working on problems, maintaining the body, all without any conscious awareness. This continuous activity would mean we're never truly inactive, never completely shut down, always processing at some level. The subconscious would be tireless, working through the night while consciousness sleeps, preparing for the next day, organising what was learned, clearing away what's no longer needed. This constant activity might be why sleep is so essential, not because the brain rests, but because it needs time for different types of processing that cannot happen while consciousness is active and demanding resources. We might be more active during sleep than we realise, the subconscious using the absence of consciousness to do essential maintenance and integration work, labouring in darkness to keep the whole system functioning, never stopping, never resting, always working to maintain the complex organism we are, processing in silence while we dream of other things, faithful and tireless in the depths below awareness, where the real work of being human continues without pause or recognition. Subconscious as mystery. Perhaps the deepest truth about the subconscious mind is that it remains mysterious, that despite all our theories and research, we cannot fully know what lies beneath consciousness, cannot completely map the depths where so much of our mental life occurs. The subconscious might be fundamentally unknowable, operating in ways that consciousness cannot directly observe or understand, forever remaining partly hidden, partly mysterious. This mystery might be essential rather than a temporary gap in knowledge, the subconscious by its nature resistant to full, conscious understanding. We might spend our lives trying to know ourselves while the deepest parts remain forever beyond reach, accessible only through indirect signs and symptoms, through dreams and slips and intuitions that hint at what lies below. The mystery might be beautiful rather than frustrating, a reminder that we are more than we can know, deeper than we can fathom, containing infinities within ourselves that will never be fully explored or mapped. The subconscious keeps its secrets, operating in darkness, doing its work unseen, shaping our lives in ways we can only partly understand. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Some things meant to remain hidden, some depths meant to stay dark, some mysteries meant to persist forever, patient and silent in the unknown territories of the self. The subconscious as eternal companion. In the end, the subconscious mind might be understood as a constant companion, present from birth to death, working tirelessly beneath awareness to keep us functioning, learning, adapting, surviving. It never abandons us, never stops working, never fails in its essential tasks even when we're unaware of its efforts. The subconscious would be the most faithful friend we never consciously know, always present, always active, always trying to help even when its help creates problems consciousness doesn't want. This companion holds our memories, processes our emotions, guides our intuitions, maintains our bodies, protects our identities, seeks our comfort, drives our curiosity, and works toward integration and wholeness. It speaks in dreams and feelings, in sudden insights and gut reactions, in the quiet wisdom that emerges when we learn to listen. We are never truly alone because the subconscious is always there, a presence in the depths, a voice in the darkness, a force shaping experience from below. Understanding this companion, learning its language, trusting its wisdom while also recognizing its limitations, this might be part of what it means to know ourselves, to live fully, to embrace the mystery of being human. The companion waits in silence, patient and eternal, working in darkness, keeping us alive and whole, asking nothing, giving everything, the hidden foundation of all we are and all we might become. And so our quiet journey through the subconscious mind comes to a gentle close. We've travelled far tonight, from ancient psychoanalytic theories to modern neuroscience, from the subconscious as hidden reservoir to the subconscious as eternal companion, touching on questions that shape who we are and how we experience being alive. The theories behind us now, like stars fading into dawn. Some theories offered answers, others only deeper questions. Some felt solid, others shimmered like mirages. But all of them carried a piece of humanity's endless curiosity, our refusal to accept the mind at face value, our need to understand what lies beneath consciousness, the hidden depths where so much of life unfolds unseen. These theories, some ancient and some born yesterday, represent our attempts to understand the most intimate mystery we face, the mystery of our own minds, of the vast territories within ourselves that remain forever partly unknown, partly hidden, operating in darkness while consciousness moves through light. Theories are strange things. They're not quite facts, not quite fantasies. They live in the space between what we know and what we imagine, between certainty and mystery. They're humanity's way of reaching toward truth with imperfect hands, building bridges across chasms of ignorance, creating maps of territories we can never fully explore. Some will be proven right, refined and incorporated into established knowledge. Others will fade, replaced by better understandings, remembered only as stepping stones on the path toward truth. But the reaching itself, the wondering, the constant effort to understand that never stops, never fails, never becomes obsolete. The theories change, but the curiosity remains, eternal and beautiful, driving us to explore the unknown territories within ourselves. If your eyes are already heavy, that's just fine. Perfect, even. Let the last traces of theories and concepts fade behind your thoughts, becoming less distinct, less important, dissolving into the general softness of approaching sleep. Let your breath carry you softly into rest, each exhale releasing a little more tension, each inhale drawing you deeper into calm, into the quiet darkness where consciousness goes when it's done with the day. There's still so much more to discover about the subconscious mind, endless theories waiting, new research emerging, mysteries that will take generations to explore. But for now, you've learned enough. You've wondered enough. You've travelled far through the hidden depths of mind, through theories about dreams and memories, about emotions and habits, about everything that happens beneath awareness. And the subconscious can wait until morning, patient and unchanging, ready whenever you return to wonder again about what lies beneath consciousness, about the vast territories within yourself that remain forever, partly hidden, partly mysterious, forever inviting exploration. You don't need to remember any of this, not the theories, not the details, not even the general concepts. They were never meant to be memorized, only experienced, like watching clouds drift across the sky, like listening to rain fall on a quiet night. What matters is not what you retain, but how you felt while listening. The gentle stimulation of curiosity, the soft pleasure of learning something new, the quiet comfort of questions asked in darkness, of mysteries acknowledged, of the unknown embraced rather than feared. That's enough. That's everything. The theories themselves can fade, becoming vague memories or forgotten entirely. But the experience of wondering, of exploring, of touching the mystery of your own mind that remains, woven into who you are, part of the fabric of this night, this moment, this gentle descent into sleep. Notice how your body has grown heavier as we've talked, how your muscles have softened, how even the weight of your thoughts has decreased, becoming lighter, more distant, less urgent. This is the natural rhythm of rest, the way consciousness gradually releases its grip, letting you drift deeper into the spaces between thoughts, into the quiet darkness where the subconscious does its work unseen. You don't need to force it, don't need to try to sleep, just allow it, the way you'd allow yourself to float in calm water, trusting the water to hold you, trusting your body to know what to do, trusting the subconscious to guide you into the rest you need. Let go of any remaining tension, any last thoughts about theories or concepts or things you should remember. Let it all dissolve into the general softness, into the approaching darkness, into the gentle embrace of sleep that waits for you, patient and welcoming. There's nothing you need to do now, no answers to chase, no puzzles to solve, no theories to understand or remember. Just the calm certainty that mystery itself is a kind of lullaby, one that will carry you into sleep if you let it. The subconscious mind remains mysterious, and that's beautiful. You remain mysterious to yourself, and that's exactly as it should be. Not everything needs to be known or understood. Some things are meant to remain hidden, to operate in darkness, to work their magic beneath awareness. So let go. Let your mind wander where it will, through dreams or darkness, through memories or nothing at all. Let your consciousness dim like a sunset, gradually, naturally, beautifully, fading into the night that waits to receive you. Thank you for spending this time with me, for letting me guide you through these theories about the subconscious mind, these questions about what lies beneath awareness, these mysteries that make us human in our wondering. Thank you for your curiosity, for your willingness to explore the unknown territories within yourself, for choosing to end your day with learning and wonder rather than emptiness or distraction. It means something, this choice you've made. It says something about who you are, someone who seeks understanding even in the quiet moments before sleep, someone who values curiosity and exploration, someone who embraces mystery rather than fearing it. And I'm grateful to be part of your evening, part of your routine, part of the quiet ritual that carries you from waking into sleep, from consciousness into the deeper territories where the subconscious does its work unseen. You're not alone in this. Right now, all across the world, others are listening too, drifting through these same theories, wondering these same questions about what lies beneath consciousness. Some are ahead of you, already deep in dreams, their subconscious minds processing the day's experiences, consolidating memories, working on problems in the darkness of sleep. Others are just beginning, their eyes still open, their minds still active, not yet ready for the descent into rest. But you're all connected by this shared experience, this common journey through mystery and wonder, through questions about the hidden depths of mind, a quiet community of curious minds, seeking rest and knowledge in the same breath, finding peace in questions that have no final answers, in mysteries that will never be completely solved. You belong to this community, this gathering of wanderers and explorers, all seeking to understand the most intimate mystery we face, the mystery of our own minds, of what we are beneath the surface of consciousness. Imagine yourself now, floating through the theories we've explored, passing by them as if through constellations in the night sky. Questions above, questions below, a galaxy of wonder all around you about the subconscious mind, about dreams and memories, about habits and emotions, about everything that happens beneath awareness. And you at the quiet center, resting in the knowledge that mystery is not something to fear, but something to embrace, something beautiful and essential. That not knowing is not failure, but invitation. Invitation to keep wondering, to keep exploring, to remain curious about the depths within yourself. That the mind keeps secrets not to frustrate us, but to keep us humble, to remind us that we are more than we can ever fully know, deeper than we can ever completely understand. Let that thought comfort you as you drift deeper into sleep. Let it wrap around you like a blanket woven from starlight and uncertainty, soft and strange and somehow perfect. The theories we've explored tonight are just whispers in an infinite conversation about what it means to be human, about what lies beneath consciousness, about the vast territories within ourselves that remain forever partly hidden. Questions asked across centuries, mysteries that connect us all, theories that will continue to evolve as we learn more about the mind. But the fundamental mystery remains, patient and beautiful, waiting in the depths, inviting exploration while resisting complete understanding. And that's perfect. That's exactly as it should be. Some things are meant to remain mysterious, to operate in darkness, to work their magic beneath awareness where consciousness cannot follow. There's nothing left to do now, no answers to chase, no puzzles to solve, no theories to understand or remember. Just the calm certainty that mystery itself is a kind of lullaby, one that will carry you into sleep, into dreams, into the darkness where the subconscious does its work unseen. So let go. Let your mind wander where it will, through dreams or darkness, through memories or nothing at all. Let your consciousness dim like a sunset, gradually, naturally, beautifully fading into the night. And know that when you wake, the theories will still be here, the questions will still wait, and the subconscious mind will still be mysterious and wonderful, still working in the depths, still shaping your life in ways you'll never fully understand. And that's beautiful. That's perfect. That's exactly as it should be. I hope you sleep well and dream softly. May your rest be deep, your dreams be gentle, and your tomorrow be bright. Thank you for being here, for wondering with me, for embracing the mystery of your own mind. Good night.